Hey y'all, No here. You've probably figured out by now I'm back in Tennessee. Uh, Finished with my great adventure to Alaska, to Tuktoyaktuk, Canada. Uh, it was a great journey. Did it turn out exactly like I had planned it? Well, of course it didn't. Like most days that I spent with you in Alaska and Canada, you know, I started the day with a plan. That plan almost changed. And I initially had hoped to spend somewhere around 3 months in Alaska and Canada, uh, but I didn't really know. But a lot of things happened. You know, snow hadn't melted like it normally would have. Uh, and really, the biggest thing that happened was all the wildfires in Canada. And after I finished driving the Dempster Highway and going to Tuktoyaktuk and back, and actually got out to civilization, uh, I really didn't realize what was going on in the rest of Canada. I knew what had been going on, but I didn't really know exactly where all the fires were and things like that. And so, uh, actually, the morning after I had finished driving the Dempster Highway, I was out of cell phone range, and so didn't have any way of getting any information at all. And so I started out driving down the Klondike Highway towards Whitehorse, and I got about 100 feet down the road, and just by chance, I got a warning from my weather app that there was a wildfire evacuation taking place in between Stewart's Crossing and Mayo, which is about 10 miles behind me. And actually, as I was driving towards Whitehorse, I could see the glow of the fire behind me because it was far enough south that it got a little bit dark at night, so you could see things like that. And so I spent the next 2 days, 2.5 probably, getting back down to the Canadian border. And it was a roundabout route that I had to take, and drove through a lot of smoke. I never saw any flames, but I talked to a lady from British Columbia when I was in Tuktoyaktuk, and she told me that the best way to get information about fires was not to Google Canadian wildfires or anything like that, but that each province puts out their own information about the fires in their province or territory. The Canadian government does not take care of that. They'll let each province and territory take care of their own. And so when I started searching that way and started trying to get the information from the individual provinces and territories, I started to see just how much fire there was and where it was, and also started to see that I couldn't go back to the Canadian border the way that I had initially intended to. So with that said, I want to show you a little video now of what it was like for me going back through all that smoke and really give you an idea of just what it's like going through something like that. So here it is. Well, I've run into a herd of bison that are camped out on the road, and I can't say as I blame them, because the road may be the only safe place they can go. I'm not about to try to make them move because there's too many of them. So that's kind of where we are. I don't know how long I'm going to have to sit here. So you kind of see just what it looks like, just how smoky it gets, you know, the way it looks. The video doesn't do it justice, though, because the video, you can't smell the smell on the video, and you know, things like that. But anyway, the title of the previous video about the Dempster Highway was, you know, I think I said if I'd known then what I know now. And so I kind of started thinking about, you know, how I could wind up this journey that we've taken together, and what would be the best way that I can help you the most to either decide if you're going to go, decide what you're going to do, decide how you're going to do it. And so it's kind of like the plans that I had the whole time I was in Alaska and Canada. You know, I'd wake up with a plan and have it all figured out. But as I thought about the best way I could help you, I just started writing down things as I thought of them. And these are not in any particular order. I tried to organize them, but the more I tried to organize them, the more scattered they got. So I'll try to keep it as organized as I can. You may want to get a pencil and paper. Be ready to pause the video multiple times to write stuff down, because I got like 3 pages of stuff that I want to go over with you to help you prepare and be ready. So the first bit of information was when I went. Okay. And I left Tennessee on June 4th, and I got back on July the 15th. And obviously, you know, there are lots of different times that you can go. That's just when I chose to go. And it also was in 2023, in case anybody's watching this after this year. June 4th through July 15th, 2023, that was door to door. And, you know, the time that you go affects, you know, how light it is at night and several things like that. Was that the ideal time to go? At the time, I wouldn't have said so. You know, if you'd asked me while I was up there before driving back through all the wildfires and stuff like that, I would have said no. If I had it to do over again, I would have left later. And the reason I say that is that if I'd left later, I might have been able to hike a lot of the trails that I intended to that had snow on them that I couldn't hike when I was there. But here's the thing. Like if I had left in, or even tried to leave in July instead of in June, I can think about what I would have had to drive through just to get to Alaska, because what I was driving through to get back from Alaska, that was just the tip of the iceberg, because I drove around most of the smoke and fire. But when you're driving up there, there's eventually just the Alaska Highway is the only way that you can go in, other than if you take the Klondike Highway branching off of the Alaska Highway. But you have to take the Alaska Highway the majority of the way to Alaska, regardless of which entry point into Alaska that you take. So just going through the list, first thing I'd like to stress on you is that it's a long trip. Took me 5 days to get from the Canadian border up to the Alaskan state line. It took me 7 days or maybe 7.5 days to get from Tennessee all the way to the Alaska line. It's fairly expensive, but not as expensive perhaps as if you used a touring company or something like that. I spent $1,300 on gas in Canada and Alaska. That's not counting, driving from the Canadian border all the way back to Tennessee. You probably saw from my videos that a lot of days what I planned to do was not what I got to do. And so that's something that you need to kind of use as a filter for your decision to go or how you're going to go. Because to me, if you don't have at least 4 weeks for this trip, maybe you should consider flying up there and then renting a camper van or, a motorhome or just a car, because it does take so long to drive all the way up there. I mean, it's 5,000 miles from here in Tennessee up to the Alaskan border, and that's just to get you to the border. That's not including any driving around in Alaska, much less the Dempster Highway. Next thing is, once you get on the Alaska Highway and into Alaska, boondocking is really easy. There are lots and lots of places that are made to pull off and spend the night just on the side of the road. I mean, it's not just on the side of the road. They're actually parking lots. A lot of them are even paved or gravel at a minimum. And, some of them actually have pit toilets. Most of them have trash bins that you can empty your trash in. And most of them are fairly level so that you can get your vehicle on a level surface to be able to park and be able to sleep without rolling off the bed. Now, with that in mind, if you absolutely deplore pit toilets, this trip may not be for you, because there aren't flush toilets in these rest areas. Pit toilets in Canada and Alaska, I mean, that's all there are. If you're in a town or something like that, obviously there's going to be flush toilets. But when you're out on the road, it's just pit toilets. That's all there is. So if you absolutely can't take those, then a road trip to Alaska, and really in a way a road trip in Alaska, may not be your cup of tea, because that's really all there is. I would say if you have the time and the finances, don't overlook the Canadian Rockies. As you may remember from my earlier videos, that's how that I entered Canada to get to Alaska, because they're really beautiful. Now, the unfortunate thing was that when I was there, there was smoke from fires that were farther east that obscured a lot of the mountains, and I really was hoping to be able to come back home, the way that I went back through the Canadian Rockies to get back down to the border, but it was just too risky to do that. Stock up on supplies if you are in Anchorage. Anchorage was the only place in Alaska or Canada where I saw prices that were fairly comparable to what I would pay here in Tennessee. Like I went to a Walmart Supercenter in Anchorage, and the prices are very similar to what I pay here in Tennessee. It really surprised me. But if you're going to be in Anchorage, stock up on whatever you can stock up on, because that's where you're going to see the best prices anywhere in Alaska. Now, also what I did is I stocked up on non-perishable foods before I left. I bought a lot of little cans of ham and little cans of chicken, instant mashed potatoes, instant rice, and I packed as much of that into the van before I even left Tennessee as I could, because I used those items a lot, and so they're definitely going to be cheaper in the United States than they are in Canada or Alaska. So if you have the room, look for places that you can stuff non-perishables in before you leave, and that can save you some money. Have a hat with a mosquito net and use it. Yes, you kind of look dorky with a mosquito net on, but once you get bitten all over the face, and once you just have them flying all around your face, trying to go in your nose and your eyes and your mouth and your ears, you will really appreciate that mosquito net. The hard part is actually, putting it on, pulling the net down, making yourself, when you start to get out of the van, you think, the mosquito's not going to be so bad. And then you get out there and you don't have it on, and then it's too late. On that line, make sure you have good rain gear. And what I found was I used it as much for mosquitoes as I did for rain. Yes, it does rain a lot in Alaska, and there are going to be times when it just rains all day, but at least at the time of year I was in Alaska, there were mosquitoes almost everywhere I went to, and there were times if I knew I was going to have to be outside for a long time, I would put my rain parka and my rain pants on, and even, I would put the mosquito net over my hat, because the insect repellent, some people think it works, but it didn't work for me. The mosquitoes just like me too well, and there's too many of them. As I said, it is a long trip, and it can start to become monotonous. So this piece of advice I would give you is don't let the trip become a job unless it is your job. If you make a living making videos, I don't do that, by the way, and you may have noticed a little Power Director icon down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. That is an app that I use to edit my videos, but they don't pay me anything. They just charge me. They put that icon there in order for me to use it, but I don't get paid anything for that little Power Director icon being used. But a lot of people do make a living making videos, so it may be your job, and if it is your job, do your job. But if it's not your job, don't be afraid to take a day off from driving, or just take a day and do nothing. Through hikers call it taking a zero, especially if it's a rainy day. That's a very good day to take a zero and just sit in place and rest. You're going to want to take a sleep mask or a really good blackout curtain. I used a sleep mask for part of the time, and then I started having some problems with my eyes. But you need to understand, if you go in July, it is not going to get dark at night. In the further north you go, it's not even going to look like it's night at all, not even close to it. So part of the time I used like one of those sunscreens that you put in your windshield. It's like silver, and those do a very good job of blocking out the light, probably as good as anything you can use. But the farther north you go, the warmer it gets, and so you need, or at least I needed, a window for ventilation. So I would sometimes put the sunscreen over the windshield, and then put the other side window sunscreen on the window that was facing the sun, when I could figure out which way the sun was going. But I almost always had to put the screen over one window and leave a window down, so it would be cool enough. Bring bear spray from home. What I found at all the border crossings is most of the border agents would ask me if I had bear spray, but none of them confiscated it or said I shouldn't be carrying it or anything like that. So, get it before you leave home, and I don't think they will confiscate it. They ask a lot about alcohol and firearms and things like that, but none of them said anything about not being able to take bear spray across the border. So it's going to definitely be cheaper to get it before you leave, and you're going to be able to find it before you leave too, because unlike here in the United States, there's not a Walmart on every corner, or there's not an REI in every town. I think there's only one REI store in all of Alaska. There might be one in Fairbanks. There's one in Anchorage. Have a real spare tire. Even if you're not going to be driving on gravel roads, which is really an impossibility because of the road construction. Even if you meant to stay on paved roads, because of road construction, you might have to drive a mile at a time or even 3 miles at a time on a gravel road where they plowed up the pavement to repave the asphalt. So you need to have more than just a little donut spare tire because you can be out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of paved roads in Alaska and in Canada, but you're basically driving through the wilderness a lot of times, and you can be 100 miles from any kind of little town at all very often. Download maps before you leave home, and even if you think that you're going to have cell phone reception or your Google Maps or whatever you use are going to work, go ahead and download. I downloaded maps the entire way, the entire route that I was going to be driving. I downloaded the whole route. It takes a little time to do it, but it's better to have that downloaded and your map app keeps working than you're on the road and you don't know how far you are from the next town because you can't reach a cell phone tower to get information, or you can't find out where the nearest gas station is. Of course, if you have your milepost, that's going to tell you, and I hope you will get a copy of the milepost. It's very, very valuable thing to have. I wouldn't recommend even attempting a trip like this without a copy of the milepost because it just tells you all the information about the roads that you could ever possibly need. Once you get on the trip, once you get up into Canada and Alaska, always check the weather forecast for the place that you're planning to go that day, and also check the fire information because once you leave the place where you are, where you have some cell phone reception, you're going to probably get to a place where there isn't any. And the last thing you want to do is to leave in the morning and not know that you're headed straight towards a wildfire. So, search out the information for the province you're in and Google it that way. Don't Google Canadian wildfires. Google British Columbia wildfires, and that will take you to the province information and help you be able to find it. Here's a good one. As you may have seen on the Dipster Highway video, I had a flat tire. And on my van, and I suspect on most vans, there is like an arrow or an indicator showing where you're supposed to put the jack to jack your vehicle up. Well, when I was changing my tire, I knew about where it was, but there was so much mud on my van, I could not find the little indentation marker showing where you're supposed to put the jack. So a little tip, do yourself a favor, take a picture of where the jack is supposed to go before you leave, and then if you have a flat tire, just whip out your phone and you got a picture of where it goes. Take a small fly swatter with you if it doesn't take up too much room. I can't tell you how much time I spent inside the van chasing mosquitoes around, trying to do this, and missing them 2/3 of the time because they're going to come inside your vehicle. There's no way to keep them out. But if I'd had something to swat them with, I could have had a better batting percentage, I think, than I had. So that's something small that you may able to put in your van. It may also keep you from getting mosquito guts all over the inside of your windshield. I've still got a trophy mosquito on the inside of my windshield. It's actually the first one that I smacked like that with the back of my hand. I took some N95 mask with me, just as a precaution. COVID still is a thing. I never wore a mask up there. I never had any indication that there was any COVID going on. I saw a few people wearing masks, very, very rarely, in, like Walmarts and stuff like that. And I still see them down here some too. But what the N95 mask was really good for is one night, I had no choice but to have to park and sleep in a place that was really smoky. And so it wasn't easy, but I actually put that N95 mask on and slept with that mask on that night. And when I woke up the next morning, I didn't have any sore throat or anything like that. And I suspect if I hadn't worn that mask, that I would have had a pretty sore throat the next morning. But that's something that you could use an N95 mask for, at least when you're sleeping or if you get caught in smoke. Black flies aren't bees. You may have seen on one of my ferry crossing videos, black flies will swarm you like bees do. They swarm around you like bees do. I thought they were bees at first, until I got a close look at a couple of them that actually flew into the van. But they won't sting you. They will bite you though, and I actually had a black fly that bit me and drew blood, because they tell me that they inject an anticoagulant into your vein and it makes you bleed. Evidently, they suck blood just like mosquitoes do. But there's actually still a scar on my leg from where that black fly bit me. If I had my choice, I would cross into Canada at Sweetgrass, Montana. That's actually the way I came out. When I went in through North Dakota at Emerson, Canada, which is south of Edmonton. But if I had to do over again, I would go in through Sweetgrass. Now, obviously, I'm from Tennessee. If you live in California, you're not going to want to drive all the way to Montana to cross the border. But what you are going to want to do, what I would advise you to do, is do as much of the east or west driving as you can in the United States. And the reason I say that is we have nice interstate highways here in the United States, but they don't in Canada. In Canada, you've got Highway 1 that crosses the entire country. You've got Highway 16 that crosses about half of it. But, there's no, even on those two major highways, and Highway 1 is actually a 4-lane highway, just about, with rare exceptions, all the way across Canada. But even on Highway 1, there's no flush toilets, there's no vending machines like you have on the interstate here in the United States. So, when I decided where I was going to go across the border, I thought, well, I've been across Montana a time or two, so I want to drive across the southern part of Canada and see that. Well, you look at the road map and, the roads look nice. Secondary roads, not primary roads. But when you get on those roads, you find that they're not very well maintained. They're full of potholes. some of the worst roads, other than the Dempster Highway that I saw, was in southern Canada when I was driving across to go up to Calgary and pick up Highway 1. So, do your east and west driving in the United States. Coming back from Canada, my plan was to come back through the Canadian Rockies. And what I really wanted to do was to come back through Waterton Lakes and Glacier National Park. But the urgency of the fires and my physical exhaustion kind of ruled that out. The way that I actually went to Alaska, and you'll have to get out a map to follow this, but as I said, I went in through Emerson, and then I took secondary roads up until I got to Canadian Highway 1 at Calgary. I took Highway 1 from Calgary to Banff. Then I took Highway 93 through the Banff National Park and Jasper National Park up to Jasper. At Jasper, I picked up Highway 16 and went across to Highway 37, otherwise known as the Cassiar Highway. Then I picked up the Cassiar Highway and took it up to the Alaska Highway, and then took the Alaska Highway the rest of the way into Canada. Unless you are planning on spending a lot of time in Canadian campgrounds, you probably won't need a lot of Canadian cash. Most everywhere takes credit cards, but what you will run into is a lot of the both Alaskan and Canadian state parks in Alaska and provincial parks in Canada have like envelopes that you put the money in and you slide them into the drop box to pay for overnight camping. So if you're planning on doing that, if you can get some Canadian cash, if you live near an airport or something, or a place where you can exchange cash, because when you cross the Canadian border, here in the United States, every bank has an ATM, and a lot of gas stations and places like that have ATMs. You're not going to find that in Canada, and you're especially not going to find that right after you cross the border. Most of the border crossings in Canada, there is no town right on the border. There's a border crossing, but there's not really a town there. Along that line, when you get your Canadian cash or when you get your American cash, make sure you have some $1 bills, because a lot of campgrounds charge like $18 a night or $15 a night. But what are you going to have in your pocket? $20 bills, right? And this is what I started calling leaving a tip, because, the price they actually charge is like $15, $18. But because you only have 20s in your pocket, you end up having to pay $20 where you could have paid $18 or $17 or even less. So have some ones that you're keeping on hand so you don't have to leave a tip at the campgrounds. Highway 1 and Highway 16 are going to be about the only places that boondocking is not going to be just like, falling off a log. There are not a lot of pullouts, not a lot of rest areas, not like you'll see on the Cassiar Highway or the Alaska Highway. So that's one place where you go. You're really going to need your milepost to see where those are, because you're going to have to plan those out. Don't let Canadian gas pumps freak you out. Here in the United States, you pull up to the pump, you put your card in, you put as much gas in as it takes to fill it up, and then your credit card charges you for it. Well, the gas pumps in Canada are different. For some reason, I don't know if it's like a Canadian law or what it is, but up there when you come to a gas pump that you pay with a credit card at the pump, you're going to put your card in the slot, and then it's going to ask you either how many liters of gas you want. Usually it will ask you how many dollars worth of gas that you want, and it'll normally give you, it'll give you a choice, like, do you want $100 worth or $150 worth or $250 worth? And you're standing there at the pump and you think, I don't know what the exchange rate is. I don't know how many dollars worth of gas that I need. And you think, well, what do I push? Well, the thing I learned as I went along, just push the highest amount, and it doesn't charge you that amount. Like if you push, I want $250 worth of gas, and you don't put that in your tank, it's not going to charge you $250. It's going to charge you for what you put in. What they're really asking you is, what is the maximum amount of gas that you are willing to pay for? So since you're filling up your tank, just push the maximum, but it won't charge you that amount. It'll charge you for what you actually pay for. But it does kind of freak you out the first time or two when you run into that, because you think, oh my Lord, what are they actually going to charge me for this? But if you're out in the wilderness and you're about to run out of gas, you kind of don't have a choice. I think I covered this in an earlier video. I mentioned it one more time. Canadian speed limits are lower than United States. 70 miles an hour is about, I never saw a speed limit higher than 70 miles an hour, or 110 kilometers per hour in Canada. So that's another reason for doing your east-west driving in the United States. If you're in a hurry and you're wanting to save some time, that's the way you can save some time. Some people do take the Alaska Highway up, and then when they get to Whitehorse, they take the Klondike Highway up north and take the Top of the World Road, or highway I think it's called, into Alaska. There actually are 2 border crossings into Alaska. I highly recommend not going in that way. The Klondike Highway, especially on the northern part, is in pretty bad shape. Once you get on the Top of the World Highway, it's all gravel road, almost all the way to Tok. And for that matter, if you're planning on driving the Dempster Highway while you're up there as part of a bigger trip, you really need to save that for the last thing that you do before you come home, because you can really, you could damage your vehicle really bad on the Dempster Highway. If that's going to happen, you want it to be at the end, not at the beginning. So save that for last. When you come out of Alaska, that's what I did. But I wouldn't do it first thing at all. Cassiar Highway is not nearly as wide or as widely traveled as the Alaska Highway. It can get a little bit creepy sometimes because you can drive for 30, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, and not even see another human. But I loved it because it wasn't so heavily traveled. And, the Alaska Highway is not heavily traveled by, lower 48 standards at all. But there was something kind of special about the Cassiar Highway and driving it. Along those lines, just remember you're not in the United States anymore. And in a way, you're not even in the United States when you're in Alaska. Even though it's a state that's not like any other state that you're ever going to be in. The roads in Alaska, for the most part, are probably better overall than the ones in Canada. But things are just much different there. You've got to remember, no matter where you are almost, unless you're in Anchorage or some town, even in towns, there can be bears and moose. So you're just remind yourself that I have to be more aware of things up there than I would at home. Most of us don't have wildfires burning all over the place. Things like that. You just have to think a little bit more than you would here at home. It almost always takes longer to drive anywhere than you think it's going to. And that makes it really hard to plan. And so that's another reason why I was saying, if you don't have a month to spend, you may want to consider flying up there to save yourself some time and renting a vehicle after you get there. And honestly, I never planned more than a day ahead. When I would start driving in the morning, I had an ultimate destination I was heading towards. But what I found was you never know what's going to happen. So my rule of thumb was I would drive towards the place that I was going to next. And then about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd start getting a little bit serious about where I was going to spend the night. But really, if you start in the morning, you say, okay, I'm going to drive from here to here. It almost never happens. Now, if you're on a time schedule, you're going to have to make it happen probably. But when you've got the leniency of, okay, I'm in a van, so if I don't make it all the way, then what I would recommend is drive the direction you're wanting to go. At 2 o'clock, get out your milepost and start seeing where some possible places are. And don't really start planning where you're going to stop till sometime that afternoon. Force yourself to drive slow on gravel. I learned that the hard way. Keep a travel journal. If you don't already do this, you should start doing it. No matter where you're traveling, keep a journal. I met so many amazing people, and you can take a picture of a person, but you can't take a picture of their name. So just lots of things, things that you smell, things that you hear, things that you don't hear. That's something I noticed at the Arctic Circle, is just how quiet and still it was. You can't really, I guess if you're taking video, but how do you take video of silence? It doesn't make any sound. But I've kept a travel journal for years. I highly recommend it. Uh, Medicare doesn't cover you in Canada. I think they may accept your Medicare card for like an emergency room, life-saving visit. But before you travel through Canada, find out what your insurance will and will not cover in a foreign country, because as familiar as Canada feels, it is a foreign country. Also recommend taking pictures and password protecting them of things like your passport, your driver's license, maybe a picture of your stove with all the stove eyes turned off. Because I got into Alaska and I couldn't remember if I turned some circuit breakers off. So I just had to call somebody to come to my house and make sure I had turned off what I thought I'd turned off. If you take a picture of it, though, you don't have to wonder about it. I had a battery booster, and if you don't know what that is, it's just like, it's a battery that you buy that you can use to jumpstart cars with. I got mine at AutoZone, but I actually was able to jumpstart a couple of guys who had a dead battery while I was up there. And also, this particular battery booster I have has a built-in air compressor, and I did use that for myself when I had my flat tire. My spare tire was a little low on air, so I was able to pump it up. So if you got room, having one of those jump starters and air compressor, excellent thing to have on hand for emergencies. Older folks will think this is a joke, but you younger folks, you need a good paper road atlas. And you may not even know what that is. If you don't, ask your grandparents probably, and they can explain to you what a road atlas is. But don't even think about leaving home without paper maps, because they don't run on batteries unless you lose them or they catch on fire. You're going to have that. Something that you could try to see how you're going to deal with the sunlight, and you'll think this is kind of funny. I didn't do it before I left, but if you want to test out your sleep mask, try sleeping with the lights on one night and see if you're able to go to sleep. If you can't go to sleep, then you might want to think about getting a different sleep mask. One thing I missed, and I found this out after I got home and started washing the van. If somebody volunteers to help you wash your van, what you want to do is say, I'll wash the passenger side and you wash the driver's side. Because what you will find, and I was amazed when I started washing the van to find this out, your driver's side on the van is going to be probably twice as dirty as the passenger's side, because that's the side that the other vehicles are always splashing or always dusting up as you drive. Now, I don't recommend waiting till you get all the way back home to wash your van. Do take your van to a pressure washer place, or if you don't have solar panels or something like that, you can even take it through an automatic car wash. Oh, I doubt that's going to do very much good. But do try to keep the mud from getting too thick on your van while you're up there. And I think, I'll double check my list here. Yeah, I think that is pretty much everything that I didn't know about the trip I was taking, and some things that I did. And so I guess this is the end of this journey. The No-No Mobile has about 38,000 miles on it. The No-No Mobile may have more miles left on it than I have left on me. I think there will still be some trips in my future, but they won't be like this trip, and they won't be like the calling that God put on me to take this trip for the reasons that I took it. And so I'm not 100% sure of where I'm going to go with the channel yet. This is the last video that I'm going to produce about this trip. But I am going to produce one more video kind of as a test video. And if I get some response from the next video, which won't be about travel at all, then maybe I'll continue this channel just along a much different line for a while. The ones of you that have watched all the videos, you know, I hope you have learned a little bit about me. You know, I said from the beginning, I'm not a professional, and it kind of shows in the videos that I produced. I don't do a lot of editing and stuff like that. You know, I don't have the background music and stuff like that, because in real life, there's no background music playing in real life, you know. I have strived and I've prayed that the information I've told you will help you in some way, and if nothing else, it won't confuse you, and you may even get a laugh out of seeing me make all the mistakes that I've made. So I've enjoyed taking this journey with you. It really has been a joy. I wouldn't take anything for it. I appreciate all of you that have subscribed and, you know, watch these videos, as comical or as unprofessional as they may have been. So I want to say thank you for watching. One last God bless you as we part ways for a while, or as we come back together whenever the time may be. And vaya con Dios.